The ritual. The Chamber of Stars had not been used in 400 years. Dust covered the ancient stones. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. The air smelled old and dead, like a tomb that had been sealed for too long. Elder Priest walked slowly into the chamber. His body was thin and tall, almost transparent. Blue light moved under his skin like water. Behind him came 12 other priests, all wearing black robes that touched the floor. They were afraid. Could see it in the way they moved, in the way their light flickered. "You are certain about this?" asked Priest Vila. She was young, barely 200 years old. Her voice shook slightly. Did not answer immediately. He walked to the center of the chamber where a large circle had been carved into the floor. The circle was filled with symbols that hurt to look at. They twisted and moved even though they were made of stone. "The Horde will reach our outer colonies in 3 days," finally said. "Our fleet is destroyed. Our warriors are dead. We have no choice." The Empire had ruled the Outer Rim for 300 years. They were not warriors themselves. Their bodies were weak, fragile like glass, but they had something better than strength. They had magic, ancient magic that could tear holes in reality and pull warriors from other dimensions. For centuries, they had summoned creatures from across the universe. Some were giants with skin like metal. Others were fast and deadly, with claws that could cut through anything. They would bind these creatures with magic, force them to fight, and then send them back when the war was over. Sometimes they died. They did not care. There were always more dimensions to harvest. But the Horde was different. They were insects, millions of them, all sharing one mind. They did not feel fear. They did not stop. They just kept coming, wave after wave, until nothing was left. "The forbidden texts speak of a species," continued. He pulled an old book from his robes. The pages were yellow and cracked. "They call themselves humans. They come from a small planet in a distant dimension. The texts say they are unusual." "Unusual how?" Vila asked. Read from the book. "They are soft. No claws, no armor, no natural weapons, but they are violent beyond reason. They fight wars against each other constantly. They have destroyed their own world many times and rebuilt it. They feel pain but ignore it. They know they will die but charge forward anyway. The texts call them broken, damaged in a way that makes them dangerous." The other priests exchanged worried looks. "The texts also say we should never summon them," Vila pointed out. "The texts were written by cowards," snapped. "We need warriors. Humans are warriors. We will summon one, bind it, and use it against the... When the war is over, we will send it back. Simple." He did not mention that the binding magic had never been tested on humans. He did not mention that the texts described humans as resistant to control. These were small details. They were masters of magic. One primitive human would not be a problem. The priests took their positions around the circle. They began to chant in the old language, words that had been spoken for thousands of years. The symbols on the floor started to glow brighter. The air grew cold. Raised his hands. Power flowed through him, ancient and terrible. He could feel reality beginning to bend, to crack. Somewhere in another dimension, a door was opening. The center of the circle exploded with white light. The priests stumbled backward, shielding their eyes. Wind howled through the chamber, knocking over candles and scattering papers. And then it stopped. A figure stood in the center of the circle. It was smaller than expected, about the same height as but thicker, more solid. It wore strange armor, black and gray, covered in burns and scratches. Smoke rose from its shoulders. The human was female, could tell from the shape of its body. Its face was flat, with 2 small eyes that were currently filled with rage. Its hands were clenched into fists. Blood dripped from a wound on its head. Lieutenant Park had been having a very bad day. 3 hours ago, she had been on the bridge of the TSS Valiant, a Terran Federation destroyer. They had been investigating strange energy readings near the edge of known space. Then the readings had spiked. The ship had been pulled through something, some kind of dimensional rift. Half the crew died instantly. The other half died when the ship exploded. Had been in an escape pod when the white light surrounded her. Now she was here, wherever here was, standing in a circle of glowing symbols while strange alien creatures stared at her. "Where am I?" she demanded. Her voice was hoarse, her throat hurt from screaming. The aliens did not answer. They just stared. Then the tallest one, the one with the blue light under its skin, stepped forward. "You are summoned, human," it said. Somehow she understood the words even though the creature's mouth did not move. "You will serve the Empire. You will fight our enemies. You will obey." Looked at the creature. She looked at the other creatures standing around her. She looked at the strange symbols on the floor, at the ancient chamber, at the whole ridiculous situation. Then she punched the tall one in the face. The creature's head snapped back. Silver blood sprayed across the floor. It stumbled and fell, making a sound like breaking glass. The other creatures gasped and moved away. "I will not serve anyone," said. Her voice was cold and steady. "Tell me where I am. Tell me how to get home, or I will hurt you again." Lay on the floor holding his broken nose. Pain was something the rarely experienced. They were above such things. But this human had hit him, actually hit him with its hands. "Bind it," he screamed. "Use the binding magic." The priests began to chant again. Purple light surrounded. She felt something pressing against her mind, trying to get inside, trying to take control. She pushed back. They did not know that humans had their own technology. They did not know about the neural implants that every Terran soldier received, the ones that protected against mental attacks. They did not know that had been trained to resist psychic manipulation. But was smart. She was a soldier, yes, but she was also an officer. She had been trained to think, to plan, to survive. She let her body go limp. She stopped fighting. She let the purple light surround her completely. "It is done," one of the priests said. "The human is bound." Stood up slowly. His nose was still bleeding. He looked at the human with hatred in his eyes. "You will learn your place," he said. "You are a tool, a weapon, nothing more." Kept her face empty, showing nothing. Inside she was smiling. Let them think they had won. Let them think she was under their control. She had seen the dimensional gateway. She had seen the ships in orbit through a window. She had already started counting soldiers, mapping exits, looking for weaknesses. And deep in her skull, her neural implant was sending a signal. A distress ping, broadcast on a frequency that could not detect. Somewhere out in the space between dimensions, Captain was receiving that signal. The thought they had summoned a weapon. They had no idea what was coming. The pretense. The TSS Indomitable floated in the void between realities. It was not a normal ship. Normal ships traveled through space. The Indomitable traveled through dimensions, sliding between worlds like a ghost passing through walls. Captain stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He was a tall man with a hard face and eyes that had seen too much. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in 3 wars. He had watched friends die and enemies surrender. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until now. "Signal confirmed, Captain," said Lieutenant Han. She was young, barely 30, but she was the best tactical officer in the fleet. Her fingers moved across the holographic display, pulling up data. "It is Lieutenant Park. She is alive. Location confirmed as the..." Nodded slowly. "They actually did it. They summoned a Terran." "Yes, sir. The ritual matched the energy signature we have been monitoring. They used their dimensional gateway to pull her from our space." Fools! The Terran Federation had discovered dimensional travel 6 years ago. It was an accident at first, an experiment that went wrong in all the right ways. Scientists had been trying to create faster communication systems. Instead, they had torn a hole in reality and found themselves looking at another universe. Since then, humanity had been exploring, carefully, quietly. They had found hundreds of dimensions, thousands of alien species. Some were friendly, most were not, and some, like they, were something worse. The Federation had been watching for 3 years. They had seen the summoning rituals. They had seen the slaves, creatures pulled from their homes and forced to fight. They had recorded everything, building a case, waiting for the right moment. "What are your orders, sir?" asked. Turned to face the main. It showed a blue and green planet covered in strange cities. Beautiful, peaceful looking. But he knew what happened inside those cities. He knew about the binding chambers where slaves screamed as their minds were broken. He knew about the fighting pits where summoned creatures killed each other for entertainment. "Contact Fleet Command," he said. "Tell them Phase 2 has begun, and bring us to yellow alert. We move when Lieutenant Park gives the signal." Was playing her part perfectly. 3 days had passed since her summoning. They had given her a small room in the warrior quarters, a place where all summoned creatures were kept. The room had no windows. The door was locked with magic, but did not mind. She was not planning to escape, not yet. Every day they brought her to the training grounds. They wanted to see what she could do. They gave her weapons, primitive things made of metal and crystal, and told her to fight. Made sure to look clumsy. She dropped the sword several times. She swung too wide, too slow. She let the training dummies hit her. They watched and shook their heads. "Humans are weaker than we thought," one of them said. "Perhaps this was a mistake." "It does not matter," replied. His nose had healed, but a thin silver scar remained. He looked at with cold hatred. "Weak or strong, it will fight. The binding magic will make sure of that." But when no one was watching, moved differently. Late at night, when the guards were lazy, she practiced in her small room. Her body was a weapon that they could not understand. She knew 12 ways to kill with her bare hands. She knew how to move silently, how to strike quickly, how to disappear in shadows. She also used her time to gather information. They were arrogant. They talked openly in front of summoned creatures, assuming they were too stupid to understand. Listened to everything. She learned that the horde was coming. Millions of insect warriors, all controlled by a single hive mind. They were terrified. Their fleet had been destroyed in the first battle. They had maybe a week before they reached there. She learned about the other summoned creatures. There were hundreds of them kept in different parts of the city. Some had been slaves for years. Their minds were completely broken, unable to think for themselves. Others were newer, still fighting against the binding magic, could see the pain in their eyes. She learned about the dimensional gateway. It was in the center of the capital city, a massive ring of stone and crystal that glowed with power. They used it for summoning, but it could also be used for travel. Anyone who stepped through would be sent back to their home dimension. At least that was what they believed. They did not know that had already found a way to modify the gateway. A small change, almost invisible, that would allow Terran ships to lock onto its signal. On the fourth night was brought before the council. It was a large room filled with floating platforms. Hundreds of sat on these platforms, all looking down at her. Stood at the center, his voice echoing through the chamber. "This is the human," he announced. "A primitive creature from a primitive world, but it will serve us well. When they arrive, we will send it to fight. If it dies, we will summon more." The council made sounds of approval. Stood silently, her head bowed, pretending to be broken. Human said, "You will speak. Tell the council why they should not destroy you." Raised her head slowly. She looked then at the council. She made her voice weak and afraid. "I will fight," she said. "I am strong. I can kill many enemies. Please do not destroy me." The council laughed. It was a cold sound, like wind through dead trees. "You see," said proudly, "the binding magic works perfectly. The human is completely under our control." Lowered her head again to hide her smile. That night, she finally activated the beacon she had planted in the dimensional gateway. It was tiny, smaller than a grain of sand, but it was powerful enough to reach across dimensions. On the Indomitable, alarms began to sound. "Captain," shouted, "we have the signal. Lieutenant Park has activated the beacon. The dimensional gateway is marked." Stood up from his command chair. His heart was beating faster now. This was the moment they had waited for. "Contact the fleet," he ordered. "All ships prepare for dimensional jump. We move in 48 hours. "What about Lieutenant Park, sir? Should we extract her?" Shook his head. "She knows the plan. She stays until we arrive. We need someone on the inside when the fighting starts." Nodded. She had served with Park before. She knew how capable the woman was. If anyone could survive alone in enemy territory, it was her. "Sir," said quietly, "the intelligence reports say the Horde will arrive around the same time we do. It could get complicated." Smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Good," he said. "Let them fight each other first. We will deal with whoever is left standing." The thought they had summoned a simple warrior. The thought they were easy prey. Neither of them knew that humanity was watching, waiting, and preparing to teach them both a lesson they would never forget. In her small room on the park lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Her body was tired, but her mind was sharp. Soon, she thought, very soon. And for the first time since her ship exploded, she allowed herself to feel something like hope. The revelation. The sky turned black at noon. Was in the training yard when the first ships appeared. They came through the clouds like a swarm of locusts, thousands of them blocking out the sun. Each ship was shaped like an insect, with sharp legs and transparent wings that hummed with energy. They screamed. They ran through the streets, their transparent bodies flickering with fear. Guards abandoned their posts. Priests dropped their sacred books. The entire city fell into chaos in seconds. Did not run. She stood in the middle of the training yard and watched. This was what she had been waiting for. Found her there, standing calmly, while the world burned around them. "Human," he shouted. His voice was high with panic. "They are here, you must fight. The binding magic commands you to fight." Turned to look at him. She tilted her head slightly, like she was confused. "Fight who?" she asked. "Fight where? You never trained me, you never gave me real weapons. You thought I was weak and stupid. Now you want me to save you." His mouth opened and closed. He had no answer. The first landed in the outer districts. They were massive things, each one carrying hundreds of warriors. The soldiers poured out like water from a broken dam. They were insects, yes, but they stood upright like humans. Their bodies were covered in black armor that grew from their skin. Their eyes were red and empty. They carried weapons that fired burning acid. The defenders tried to fight back. They had summoned creatures from a dozen dimensions, warriors bound by magic, forced to protect their masters. Giant rock creatures smashed into the lines. Fast, four-armed hunters leaped through the air, cutting with crystal claws. Floating jellyfish creatures released clouds of poison gas. But they did not stop. For everyone that fell, 10 more took its place. They felt no fear. They felt no pain. They just kept coming. Watched from the training yard as the battle moved closer. She could hear screaming now, both and their slaves. The air smelled like smoke and blood and something else, something sharp and chemical. A guard ran past her, then stopped. He turned back, his eyes wide with terror. "Why are you not fighting?" he demanded. "The binding magic should force you to fight." Smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Your binding magic never worked on me," she said. "I have been pretending this whole time. I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to watch." The guard's face twisted with shock. He raised his weapon, a crystal rod that could shoot lightning. But before he could fire, a warrior appeared behind him. Its claws went through his body like scissors through paper. Silver blood splashed across the ground. The warrior turned to face. It was taller than her, with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked together hungrily. Moved. She had been trained by the best soldiers in the Terran Federation. She had spent years learning how to fight, how to kill, how to survive. They had seen none of this. They had seen only what she wanted them to see. Now they would see the truth. She ducked under this first strike and grabbed its lower arm. She twisted hard and felt the joint break. The creature screamed, a high buzzing sound. She used its own arm to pull herself up, then drove her elbow into the soft spot where its head met its neck. It did not get up. Picked up the guard's crystal rod. She did not know how it worked, but she pointed it at the next warrior and pressed the button. Lightning shot out and hit the creature in the chest. It exploded in a shower of green blood. More came, killed them. She moved through the battle like a ghost, striking fast and hard, never staying in one place for too long. They were strong, but they were slow. They relied on numbers, on overwhelming their enemies with waves of bodies. They had never fought something like her, but was not trying to win. She was just surviving, waiting for the signal. Found her again near the dimensional gateway. The great stone ring was still glowing, still active. Priests were trying to use it to summon more warriors, but the ritual was failing. There was too much chaos, too much fear. "You tricked us," said. His voice was hollow now, empty of hope. "The binding magic was never real. You were never under our control." "No," agreed, "I was not." Why would you pretend? Why did you not escape?" Looked at him. For a moment she almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Because my people are coming," she said, "and I needed to be here when they arrived." His eyes went wide. "Your people, but we summoned you. You are alone. There are no other humans in this dimension." Laughed. It was a real laugh, full of genuine amusement. "You really do not understand, do you? You thought you were summoning primitives. You thought humans were weak and stupid, easy to control. But we have been watching you for years. We have ships that can travel between dimensions. We were just waiting for a reason to come here." She pointed up at the sky. Looked up. At first he saw only ships still swarming like insects, but then something changed. The sky itself seemed to tear open like fabric being ripped apart. Bright white light poured through the gaps. And through that light came ships. They were massive, bigger than anything had ever seen. Their hulls were gray and black, covered in weapons that glowed with terrible energy. They moved in perfect formation, 12 of them, arranged like a spear aimed at the heart of the fleet. The Indomitable led the formation. Captain stood on the bridge, his face hard and calm. "All ships," he said, his voice carrying across the fleet. "Weapons free." The Terran fleet opened fire. It was not a battle. It was destruction. The ships tried to fight back, but their weapons could not penetrate Terran shields. The Terran cannons, however, cut through armor like it was made of paper. In 43 seconds, the armada was gone. Burning debris rained down on the capital. Some pieces landed in the streets, crushing buildings and setting fires. The warriors on the ground stopped moving, confused. Their hive mind had been destroyed with the fleet. They were nothing without it. Fell to his knees. His body was shaking. Everything he believed, everything he knew was falling apart. What are you?" he whispered. Looked down at him. Her face was covered in blood and dirt and ash. Her eyes were cold. "We are humans," she said, "and you made a very big mistake when you tried to summon us." A Terran landed nearby. The doors opened and soldiers poured out, their weapons raised. They moved through the remaining warriors quickly, efficiently, ending the fight in minutes. One soldier approached. He was young, with a familiar face. "Lieutenant Park," he said, saluting. "Captain sends his regards. He said to tell you that you have earned a very long vacation." Almost smiled, almost. "Tell the captain I will take that vacation after we finish here," she said. "We still have work to do." She looked at, still kneeling in the dirt. Behind him, the other were surrendering, their hands raised, their bodies dim with defeat. The summoning was over. Now came the reckoning. The reckoning. The great hall of the council was silent. No more floating platforms, no more proud voices echoing off the walls. The leaders sat on the floor like prisoners, their bodies dim, their eyes empty. Captain walked into the hall with heavy boots that echoed in the silence. Behind him came Lieutenant Park, finally wearing clean clothes and proper armor. Beside her walked Lieutenant Han, carrying a small device that projected holograms. And behind them came 20 Terran Marines, their weapons ready. At the back of the group was Lieutenant. She was small and quiet with glasses and a soft face. She did not look like a soldier. She was not a soldier. She was something more dangerous. She was a lawyer. Sat at the front of the prisoners. His silver scar had faded, but his eyes still held hatred when he looked at. "You have no right to be here," he said. His voice was weak, but he still tried to sound proud. "This is our world, our empire. You are invaders." Stopped in front of him. He looked down at the elder with no expression on his face. "Invaders," he repeated. "You pulled one of my officers out of her dimension against her will. You tried to enslave her mind. You planned to use her as a weapon and then throw her away when she was no longer useful. And you call us invaders." His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Show them," said Tu. Activated her device. Holographic images filled the air above the prisoners. They looked up and saw their own crimes displayed before them. The first image showed a binding chamber. A creature, something like a large blue cat, was strapped to a table. Priests stood around it, chanting. Purple light surrounded the creature's head. It was screaming, a terrible sound that made several look away. "This is what your binding magic looks like from the inside," said. "We have technology that can record brain activity. This creature was fully awake and aware while you destroyed its mind. It felt everything." The image changed. Now it showed a fighting pit. Two summoned creatures, both covered in wounds, were fighting while watched from above. One of them finally fell, too injured to continue. A priest raised his hand and the fallen creature burst into flames. "You killed them when they could not fight anymore," continued. "We have records of over 10,000 executions in the last century alone." More images appeared. Summoned creatures working in mines, their bodies broken by labor. Summoned creatures used as test subjects for new weapons. Summoned creatures kept in cages, fed only enough to stay alive. Some of the prisoners began to cry. Silver tears ran down their transparent faces. "You called them animals," said. "You said they were not intelligent, not real, not worthy of respect. But we have spoken to the survivors. We have heard their stories. They had families. They had dreams. They had lives before you stole them." Finally found his voice. "They were from lesser dimensions. They were meant to serve higher beings. This is the natural order." Stepped forward. Her face was calm, but her eyes were burning. "I am from a lesser dimension," she said. "According to your records, humans are primitives, weak, stupid, easy to control. Is that what you believe?" Did not answer. "Your binding magic did not work on me because humans developed technology to protect our minds. We did this because we have been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years. We know every trick. We have seen every horror. There is nothing you can do to us that we have not already done to ourselves." She leaned closer too. "But we also learned. We changed. We decided that some things were wrong. Slavery is wrong. Torture is wrong. Taking living beings and breaking their minds is wrong. You never learned that lesson, so we are here to teach you." Stepped forward holding a data pad. Her voice was soft but clear. "The Terran Federation has documented 14 dimensions affected by summoning rituals. We have identified over 100,000 individuals who were taken against their will. We have evidence of systematic slavery, torture, and murder spanning more than 300 years." She looked at the council with eyes that held no mercy. "Under the laws of the Galactic Courts, which the Empire signed 200 years ago, these are crimes against sentient life. The punishment is severe. Your government will be dissolved. Your leaders will face trial. Your dimensional technology will be destroyed, and every summoned creature still alive will be freed and given the choice to return home. You cannot do this, another shouted. He was younger than his light still bright with anger. We have existed for 10,000 years. You are just humans, a species we never even heard of until now. Turned to look at him. His voice was quiet but hard. You never heard of us because we were careful. We watched. We gathered evidence. We waited for the right moment. We did not attack out of anger or revenge. We came with proof, with law, with justice. That is what makes us different from you. He turned to address all the prisoners. The Empire believed it had the right to take whatever it wanted from other dimensions. You believed that power made you superior, but power without wisdom is just cruelty. Strength without compassion is just violence. You had 300 years to realize this. You failed. He nodded to the Marines. Take them to the holding cells. The trials will begin tomorrow. The Marines moved forward. The prisoners did not resist. There was no point. Their fleet was destroyed. Their armies were scattered. The summoned creatures they had relied on for centuries were now being freed by Terran medics. Watched as was led away. The old priest looked back at her one last time. His eyes were filled with confusion, like he still could not understand how this had happened. You will regret this, he said. Other empires will hear about what you did. They will come for you. Smiled, but it was a sad smile. Maybe, she said, but they will also hear about what you did, and they will have to choose which side of history they want to be on. I think many of them will choose wisely. Was led away. The great hall fell silent again. Walked over to, he put a hand on her shoulder. You did well, Lieutenant. Better than anyone could have expected. Shook her head. I just did my job, Captain. The real work starts now, freeing the slaves, helping them recover, making sure this never happens again. It will take years, said, maybe decades. The damage is deep. Then we will work for decades, replied. That is what humans do. We break things, yes, but we also fix them. Sometimes we even make them better than before. Outside, the sun was setting on the capital. The fires from the battle had been put out. Terran ships floated in the sky, keeping watch. And in the slave quarters across the city, creatures from a dozen dimensions were waking up for the first time with clear minds and free wills. They did not know what would happen next. They did not know if they could ever go home, but they knew one thing. They were no longer alone. The humans had come, and the humans would not abandon them. That night, for the first time in 300 years, the slaves of the Empire slept without chains on their minds. It was a beginning. The inheritance. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Empire. Commander Park stood on the observation deck of Terran Station Horizon, watching ships drift slowly through the void. The station was humanity's achievement, a massive structure floating in the space between dimensions. From here, you could see into 100 different realities, each one glowing with its own light. Had changed in the past year. She was still strong, still sharp, but there were lines around her eyes that had not been there before. She had seen too much. She had done too much. Some nights she still dreamed of the binding chambers, of the screaming creatures, of the silver blood on ancient stones. But she had also seen healing. She had watched freed slaves take their first steps as free beings. She had seen families reunited across dimensions. She had witnessed the impossible become possible. The door behind her opened. Captain walked in, his boots clicking against the metal floor. He had been promoted to admiral after the campaign, but he still moved like a soldier, still carried himself with quiet strength. The council approved your proposal, he said, standing beside her at the window. Rapid response teams in every known dimension. Authorization to intervene in any confirmed case of dimensional slavery. Nodded slowly. It is not enough. I know. There are thousands of dimensions we have not mapped, other empires like the Other species who think they have the right to take what they want. I know, repeated, but we cannot save everyone at once. We have to start somewhere. Was quiet for a long moment. Below them, a ship from they was docking at the station. The new government had overthrown the warlords who started the war against the. They were peaceful now, trying to rebuild. The hive mind was gone, replaced by something like democracy, millions of individual voices learning to work together. I did not expect that, said, watching the ship. Former enemies becoming allies. People can change, replied. Even insect people. They were controlled by a single mind that wanted only war. When that mind was destroyed, the individuals were free to make their own choices. Most of them chose peace. Most of them. Most of them is enough to start. The observation deck doors opened again. Lieutenant Han walked in carrying a data pad. Her face was serious, which usually meant bad news. Commander Park, she said, we have detected another summoning ritual, different dimension, same methodology as the. Turn to face her, details. Small empire called the. They have been summoning creatures for about 50 years, much newer than the. Maybe 200 slaves total. They do not know we are watching them. Do they know about what happened to the? Shook her head. No, they are in a distant dimension, isolated, no contact with other dimensional travelers. Looked at, the Admiral's face was hard. Your call, Commander, he said. You lead the rapid response program now. This is your decision. Thought about the choices in front of her. They could wait and gather more evidence, like they did with the. They could build a case and present it to the galactic courts, everything proper and legal and slow. Or they could act now, stop the suffering before it got worse, save the slaves while there were still slaves to save. How long before the next ritual? She asked. 3 days, replied. That is enough time, straightened her shoulders. Contact the Horizon Strike team. We launch in 24 hours. I want the leadership in custody before they can complete another summoning. Nodded and hurried away. Raised an eyebrow. No waiting this time, no years of intelligence gathering. We have enough evidence already. They taught us what to look for. They are smaller, weaker, and they do not know we are coming. If we wait, more innocent beings will be enslaved. I will not allow that. Smiled. It was a rare expression on his face, but genuine. You have changed, he said. When we first met, you were angry. You wanted revenge for what they did to your ship, your crew. Now you are thinking about others, about preventing future suffering. Is that bad? No, it is exactly what a commander should be. It is why I recommended you for this position. He paused. Your crew would be proud. Felt a sharp pain in her chest. She still missed them. Every day she thought about the people who died when the Valiant exploded. Their faces, their voices, their dreams that would never come true. But the pain was different now. It was not just grief, it was purpose. They would want me to keep going, she said quietly. They would want me to make sure their deaths meant something. And they do. Because of you, because of what you endured, the empire is gone. Thousands of slaves are free. The galactic courts have new laws protecting dimensional travelers. You turned tragedy into change. Below them, the first assembly was gathering. Delegates from 30 different species were arriving, representing freed slaves and former enemies and new allies. They came in ships of every shape and size, from every corner of the dimensional map. A year ago, none of this existed. A year ago, the dimensions were divided, isolated prey for empires like the. Now they were coming together, learning to work as partners, building something new. Appeared on the deck, her data pad in hand as always. She had been promoted to Chief Legal Officer of the Terran Dimensional Authority. Her job was to write the rules that would govern contact between dimensions. Commander, she said, the assembly is ready to begin. They are asking if you will speak at the opening ceremony. Hesitated. She was not a politician. She was a soldier. Public speaking was not her strength. But then she looked down at the gathering ships, at the creatures from 100 worlds coming together, because humanity had shown them it was possible. "Yes," she said, "I will speak." The ceremony was held in the station's central hall. Thousands of beings filled the space, their bodies reflecting the light of distant stars. Some floated, some crawled, some stood on legs like trees, but all of them were listening. Stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. She saw faces she recognized. Freed slaves, their minds finally their own. Diplomats, their red eyes now calm instead of hungry. And humans, hundreds of them, standing shoulder to shoulder with beings from other dimensions. "1 year ago," began, "I was pulled from my reality against my will. I was told I was a slave. I was told I had no choice. I was told that my life belonged to someone else." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But I was not alone. My people came for me, not because I was special, but because we do not abandon our own. And when we arrived, we found others who had been abandoned, others who had been taken, broken, used, and thrown away. We could not ignore them. We would not." She looked directly at the freed slaves in the crowd. "You are not slaves anymore. You are not tools or weapons or property. You are people with the same rights as anyone else, and you will never be alone again. The Terran Federation and every species in this assembly swears to protect you, swears to protect everyone in every dimension who faces the same evil you faced." Step back from the podium. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, the applause began. It grew louder and louder until the whole hall was shaking with sound. Appeared beside her, her face urgent. "Commander, the strike team is ready. We need to leave now if we want to reach the in time." Nodded, she had said what needed to be said. Now it was time for action. She walked toward the exit, the applause still echoing behind her. As she reached the door, she heard a voice call out, "Commander Park." She turned. A small creature, something like a purple fox, was running toward her, recognized it, one of the first slaves they had freed from the... "Thank you," the creature said. Its voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "Thank you for everything." Knelt down to meet its eyes. "You do not need to thank me," she said. "Just live your life, be free, be happy. That is all the thanks I need." She stood up and walked through the door, was waiting with her gear. "Ready?" asked. "Always." They headed for the ship that would take them to the next fight, the next rescue, the next step in humanity's endless journey through the dimensions. The Terrans had not been summoned heroes. They had not been chosen by fate or destiny. They had simply decided that slavery was wrong, and they had done something about it. That was the human way. And they were just getting started.